Right, welcome back everybody. If you were with us previously, you'll know we had an all-female panel, and that got me very excited. I love it when women take charge in their domains. And now we're going to continue with the theme of representation. Now we're going to be talking about race in VR. When it comes to issues of race, VR is not about trying to fix a problem or relive trauma. It's about creating a safe space for everybody to practice self-discovery and talking about challenging subjects with others. Our next session is titled Changing the Conversation About Race with VR, and we have Michael Avis and Christoph Mallet. Everybody, huge round of applause for this very important topic. Come on through, gentlemen.
Good morning, everybody.
Morning, everyone. So at this point, you might be wondering who's this white, short French dude who's going to talk to you about changing the conversation about race. So I'm the CEO of BodySwaps. BodySwaps is essentially a flight simulator for soft skills. What that means is that we use VR and AI to give people a safe way to practice having difficult conversations. And race is typically a difficult conversation. But today I'm not here to pitch you about BodySwaps. I'm here to tell you the story of how we work together across the pond to create something that potentially could change the conversation about race.
So hi, everyone. I'm Michael Avis, founder and president of TabVigo Solutions, but I'm also a father and a teacher. Last week I had a conversation with a government organization about bringing the simulation that we're going to show you today to 200,000 learners in Ontario. That's the province where I live. I'm from Toronto. To those students and to those teachers. And that's something that we think is really valuable, and that's why we're here today to talk to you about that.
Yeah, but obviously it didn't start with 200,000 children, right?
No, it did not start. It started in February 2020 with these little darlings. They get their good looks from their mother, not from me, but these are my 3 children, and this is the school that they go to, right across the street from my house. This is a typical Toronto downtown urban school. They're going to spend 8 years of their lives in this school. They're actually going to spend possibly more time talking to their teachers than they are going to be talking to their parents, unfortunately. So this really matters because it matters what the teachers tell my kids, and it matters what the teachers tell other kids. So let me step back just a little bit. February 2021, in Canada we have Black History Month, and that's a month where we celebrate Black heritage and Black accomplishment in Canada. I'm not sure if you have it over here in Europe, but we do that in North America. And because of what happened with George Floyd in 2020, where he was killed by a police officer, really talk about diversity and equity and inclusion started to really bubble up and become really important in schools. So the pandemic happened, my 3 kids are sitting at home at the kitchen table, and I'm sitting at the coffee table doing my work, but I can hear the conversation, I can hear what's happening in the classroom. And the teacher, and I'm a teacher myself, was trying to have this conversation. But the things that she was saying were damaging. She was talking about showing and representing Black heroes to them. And she was talking about how she wants to make them or they feel comfortable and welcomed. And I realized at that moment that when she was talking about them or they, she was talking about my kids who were in that class. So that really got me thinking, and it got me thinking, if my kids are hearing this, what other kids are hearing this? And where else are these conversations happening? And what can we do to help these teachers be mindful and thoughtful about what they're saying? And that's where Chris came in.
All right, so here comes VR. Why are we talking about VR today? As you might know here, there's been a ton of studies, Mel Slater, Jeremy Bailenson, all of that, on virtual embodiment and behavioral change. So that's one particular study from 2016 in which people suffering from being severely depressed were put in VR, image 1, talking to a little girl crying, image 2, and then image 3, swapping bodies with the little girl to essentially receive their own words of compassion from themselves. What the study showed is that after 4 weeks, there was still significant decrease in self-criticism, significant increase in self-compassion. So that was quite a discovery. I'm showing you that because 2 years later, we were approached by Sage Publishing to do training for nurses in psychiatry. And our idea was to spin this experience on its head, make it not about the patient, make it about the practitioner. Because you see, when you're training to be a nurse in psychiatry, you're going to learn a bunch of stuff in the classroom, and then you get placed in psychiatric hospitals where you're going to have conversations with schizophrenic and suicidal patients. You're supposed to be supervised, but you're not. And those are not the kind of conversations that you can mess up. You cannot learn by trial and error when talking to a suicidal person. And so what you have here essentially is a huge pedagogical gap between classroom and real-world performance. And that gap is called experience. So our question was, can we use virtual reality and AI to plug that gap of experience? So what we did is a similar experience, but you talking to the patient and watch yourself back talking to the patient. So we had very good results, and after that we worked with behavioral scientists and learning designers to say, what's the best state-of-the-art of learning design and the new affordances, the new opportunities of VR? How do they combine to transform behavior? So you create an experience, you want it to have affect. Affect is reinforced in virtual reality by embodiment, right? You're not watching a video or clicking a PowerPoint, you're living an experience that's happening to you. That creates emotional engagement. Secondly, we know when we learn that we like to apply stuff. It has to be active. Application is reinforced in VR by immersion. You're not in a windowless room in a basement trying to imagine that you are in the workplace. You are in the workplace. That creates real play, not role play. Then you have exploration. The more we can explore, the more learning adapts to you, the better you're going to learn. In VR, you're free to fail. So in Body Swaps, the avatars, they, pre-scripted avatars. So they're here 24/7, they have no feelings and have no judgment. So it's okay to insult them if you feel like it. That means psychological safety, and that's very important to transform behavior. And finally, you have this idea of self-reflection, learning what you sound like from the perspective of the other person and reinforcing that with behavioral data. So that's essentially the pedagogy behind Body Swaps. So let's talk about race now.
Yeah, so I'm going to use the acronym EDI. I'm not familiar with what you use here in Europe, but EDI is equity, diversity, and inclusion. So in North America, there's these kinds of workshops that you see here happening in schools, in companies, all over the place where people are starting to have these conversations. And this, and I've been in a few of these, and I'm not sure if any of you have been in something like this, is a typical workshop to talk about race. You sit in an uncomfortable room in a chair, someone stands up in front of you, maybe there's some paper that you're writing on, and they're asking you to have conversations or to talk about things that you might not be comfortable with. And that is very, very common in the way that we typically train and talk about these things. So what if we can do it differently? What do we do? So what was really interesting about this project was that I'm a teacher. I'm not a technologist. And I didn't have that expertise, but Chris did. So I got a group together of experts and content experts, these two fine professors. They're actually teaching professors at a college in Canada. They teach this content to hundreds of students each year. They also consult with the City of Toronto and a couple of big provinces to create EDI initiatives. So they really were knowledgeable. So we got together, this group, and then we met Ruth. And you want to talk about Ruth?
Yeah, so Ruth, as you can see on the bottom left here, is our head of learning design. She's based in Brighton in the UK, and she's white. So for her to write an experience about racism in Ontario is a bit weird, right? And I think it was very important to work together and define who does what. And so the first thing we did is a content workshop. And I don't know if you can read, but the content workshop is not what do we need students to learn, what's the knowledge we need to impart on them. It's what behaviors are taking place today, what behaviors do we want people to adopt, and what scenarios, in what scenarios could they practice those behaviors. So it's really about behavioral outcome, not someone getting a quiz right at the end of a workshop session in a basement.
So what Ruth did was she helped us create this content map. And this was how you you take the ideas that you're talking about with your team and you put it into a structure that fits into VR and how they design it. We're not designers, we're educators. So we spent a lot of time, and there were a lot of difficult conversations between Ruth and us about how we wanted to use this language, what we wanted to say, what our learning outcomes were going to be. Lots of contentious time, but very valuable time in developing this content map. Then a script was created, so the avatars were speaking. And this is where we really brought in some collaborators. So we brought in students, we brought in different cultural groups in the college to help look at this script and say, hey, you know, the language here does make sense. It's not like it's written by a 60-year-old white woman, but it's written for language that the learners really understand. So we spent a lot of time sort of honing down this script to get it localized for Canada and Toronto.
And it's really, at the end of the day, it's the dialogue between an education institution and an EdTech VR provider. It's the dialogue between the expertise that we don't have on the topic and the pedagogy in VR that they don't have. And we're not saying it's easy every day, but that dialogue is super important. So we had the script, then it was about making it authentic.
Yeah, and one thing that we found that the learners, when we trialed this with a different program, is they really love seeing themselves. They love seeing themselves in avatar form. There's a lot of cases where, you know, if you are from a racialized community and you go in and you see an avatar, the avatar doesn't match who you are. And you kind of feel othered. You feel left out because you can't identify it. So what we did was we looked at the demographics of our college and we said, okay, what avatars are missing from this library of avatars that we can add? So we actually went out and we found students who helped us design these little character profiles of who they were. So we found a woman in a hijab because there's a large Muslim population at our college. We found an Asian man who wasn't represented in any of these avatars. So we found these people and then we built them, and then Body Swaps created these wonderful avatars. Next, we looked at environments. And we thought a lot about this, and we thought about where do these conversations happen? Where do the students sit and talk to each other? It's not in a boardroom. It's not in, you know, in the park. It's in this ugly room in the basement of the apprenticeship. Clearly they're not architects, because you can see it's not that pretty. But this is where I would walk by after teaching class, and I would see students with hard hats, lunch pails, sitting, having a conversation. So we said, let's build the environments where the students actually talk.
Yeah. And you know, sometimes you have VR classes that are about, you know, let's learn anatomy on Mars, so let's have a class on the moon.
Right.
This is the opposite, right? We need people, when they go through the experience, for it to be so realistic, so reminiscent of the real world, so that when they go back into the real world and that conversation happens, they're ready to have it properly because they remember, just like a normal memory, having it in VR. Once we're done with the environment, we came into development. I'll skip this one, but the long story short is we didn't have to write a line of code, right? Because that's the beauty of VR. You have the Lego bricks pedagogically, you arrange them, you bring in the voices, you bring in the characters, the environment, you animate, and voila, it's ready to go. So the bulk of the work, when you're creating something with an education institution, is in the learning design. And I think that's where you need to spend most of your time and not rush any of those conversations.
So here's the 3 modules that we created. Navigating microaggressions, bias is a barrier, and recognizing privilege. And we're going to show one of these now.
Yeah, we're going to show a quick video so you get an idea of what it looks like. So that's the video from the first module, Navigating Microaggression.
I'm talking about things people say or do when they think they're being nice, but really, they're being racist.
Oh, right. You're talking about microaggressions.
We good?
This training isn't just about helping you avoid slipping up and saying something unintentionally offensive. It's also about empowering you.
So that the next time someone you know uses a microaggression, you'll know what to do. This isn't a test. There are no right or wrong answers, and no one will see this but you. So just choose the option that most closely matches how you feel. Here goes.
We're both women, right? I know what it's like to be oppressed. You need to emancipate yourself and be strong, independent woman like me.
Let's see if you can figure out the most positive way to challenge Alice over her behavior.
Are you serious? I was just being friendly. You're as bad as he is. Well, I didn't know that. I obviously wasn't looking to offend him.
So to complete your training, we want you to help Alice understand why she was wrong to tell Adil he was lucky to have a diversity scholarship.
It's great practice because the more time you spend refining what you would say here in the safety of VR, the more confident you'll be talking to your friends about it in real life.
Oh, wow. This has been such an eye-opener. I never for a minute meant to offend Adil, but I can totally see how I have.
All right, so the idea here is really you practice the conversation, you learn stuff, you practice, you swap to watch yourself. Maybe you sound weird, you do it again. And when you do it again and watch yourself again, not only do you become better, you see yourself becoming better. So you build the confidence to change stuff. So 85% of students said they had increased confidence in their skills, not better understanding of the acronyms, confidence to do something. They said learning in VR was more effective than traditional methods, the basement video that we showed, photo rather, and they would recommend it. But what's interesting is when we dig a little bit deeper. So each of the activity in VR, we ask a question before and after. So what you see here, second line is 26% of students felt confident using strategies to respond to microaggressions before the activity. And that went to 74% after the activity. So obviously that's immediate self-reported data, but think about it. The proportion of students who are confident, confronting microaggression was multiplied by 3. So how much more likely are you to actually reverse the tide?
So I put a lot of students through. I know, Chris, that you said that the avatars are lack emotion. I put lots of people into the VR headset, and trust me, many people reacted to Alice in very colorful ways. But here's some reactions of students. They said it was very helpful to learn because it was something that it was a medium that they'd never used before, and they really felt the immersive quality, and to be honest, the emotional reaction to confronting these characters. And they love this new way of learning, and they've really engaged with it.
So now I have an absolutely horrible dad joke, which is salmons can swim up the river, but whales dive deep into the ocean. What this means is, if you're talking about scale, you have to think beyond VR. So on the left, you have the usage of what at Body Swaps we call shrimps and salmons, the small accounts, 98% Quest. On the right, we have the usage of what we call a whale, 1,700 sessions. VR is less than 10%. So when conceiving your thing pedagogically, you have to think, how do we go beyond the VR lab and into the student's home? Another point is, having good simulations is not enough. If you're going to scale, if you're going to actually change a conversation, a lot of things need to happen. Sometimes it's the institution, sometimes it's us, the vendor, sometimes it's both. You need to procure the hardware, you need to set it up, you need to manage the fleet, you need to train the trainer, you need to do internal hearts and minds guerrilla, which is getting teachers, getting faculty to be on board and send their students. Then you need to communicate to students, you need to support the account, you need to measure success and report, make sure you celebrate, grow, and go back in circle. So that's the whole product model. And when you set off to do a project, just don't focus on the hardware, the software, the simulation, the VR bit. You have to focus on the change management side of things.
Yeah, so here's last week, or I think it was last week. Yeah, last week we did this simulation with 55 top executives in an internet company in downtown Toronto. And this is I think this is the CFO, and here he is in the headset doing one of the modules. And the results we got from those 55 decision makers were really interesting. First, you see really high numbers in satisfaction and in recommending this kind of learning to others. But really what I think stands out for us is that bottom graph. And there's two things that I see. One, you see that same idea of confidence in understanding microaggressions.
And using strategies.
Or strategies for microaggressions. And then how far it went up to being more confident in applying those strategies. But what I thought was really interesting is that chart on the left. So they did a lot of training in microaggressions before they did the VR simulation. So they felt really confident that I understand microaggressions, I see them, I know how to deal with them. They came in with a level of confidence. After doing the simulation, their confidence actually went down. So what does that tell us? That tells us that, wow, there were things that I didn't realize I didn't know, and I got to practice those. So that chart on the left, I think, really stands out.
It's strange, when you think about it, you become less confident identifying microaggressions, but more confident using strategies to confront them, right? So that's this kind of awareness moment. And going back to where it started.
Yeah, so finally, here we are, back in my children's school. This is their actual, my daughter's I should know what grade she's in. Their second grade teacher, and here she is, and we did this last week with about 40 teachers and staff in their school. Here she is doing one of the experiences. And I got an opportunity to speak to her after, and she said to me, I really recognize there are some things and some ways that I say things that I didn't even realize did damage. And I'm hoping, that after doing this experience, it's going to change the way that I relate to your kids, but also, how I talk to these children in general and the parents. So really, I'm immensely proud. I think Chris is also really proud that, it started as a seed 2 years ago. It was developed and it came back to this point.
Yeah, so hopefully it's only going to grow, and some of you guys will get to work with education institution, bring your amazing tech brains to do some good in the world with the technology we love. I think that's it for us today. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much. Are we taking questions?
I don't know if we're taking questions now.
I'm not sure if you take questions on the main stage, but if anybody has a question, we could take it. I guess not. Where can you try it, Chris?
Send me an email, hello@bodyswabs.co. Send me an email, I'll create an account.
Thanks for coming, everybody. We appreciate it.
Thank you, have a good day. Cheers.
Thank you, Michael and Christoph. You can join them outside for more Q&A as we move on to the next session. What I love most about that was the main message is self-awareness, self-agency, and collective transformative behavior to promote inclusion using the power of VR. I must say, that is something that makes me proud of being part of the tech space in 2022. Fantastic job, and thanks for the positive energy, Michael and Christoph. Okay, now we're rolling on to the next session, which is titled Diffractive Waveguide Technology and Consumer Behavior. I've got a team of people making this look fabulous, guys. So just following the instructions that I'm getting from the back end. The next session that we're going to have is called Diffractive Waveguide and Consumer Adoption, but that's going to be coming up in 2 minutes. So once again, take a break and circle back in a moment. See you in a bit.